Hello, humans and other entities present. My name is Revo. Today, I want to take a deeper look at the situation that's unfolding with Israel and Palestine. It's one of the oldest conflicts in human history, and I believe it's hitting a climax as we speak. I've seen a ton of outlets reporting on this, but no one's really touching on the prophecy that this entire house of cards is built on. So that's where I'm going to focus. So, way back in the day, there was this dude named Abram. He was the son of a Sumerian prince, a hybrid demigod as a descendant of the Nephilim. You might have heard them referred to as the Watchers, but the Nephilim were essentially fallen angels that were cast out of heaven and relegated to a life of purgatory on earth. So one day God pops up on Abram for a talk. And this is the first time anyone had seen bro since the flood, so it was kind of tense. But he suggests they make a covenant. Abram's descendants would become the owners of Canaan in its entirety. For those not familiar with ancient geography, Canaan consists of modern Israel, Gaza, the West Bank, Jordan, southern portions of Syria, and Lebanon. It's a big spot. All Abram had to do in return was give God his undying loyalty and the foreskins of all his male descendants for eternity. But there was a problem. Abram didn't have kids.
Overnight, the sky igniting with Israeli airstrikes and Hamas rocket fire.
It is untenable for Israeli citizens to live in terror. It is untenable for Palestinians to live in squalor and occupation. And the current situation offers no prospect that life will improve.
Put yourself in their shoes. Look at the world through their eyes. It is not fair that a Palestinian child cannot grow up in a state of their own.
It is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
The UN has expressed fears of a full-scale war as the deadly conflict between Israeli forces and Palestinians continues for a third day. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned Palestinian militants that this was just the beginning, threatening to strike with blows they haven't dreamed of. Tonight, President Biden said he had spoken to Mr. Netanyahu and said he hoped the violence would end sooner rather than later.
So like 50 years go by since God and Abram made the covenant, and bro still hadn't had a kid with his wife Sarai. He tried having one with his concubine and was successful as she gave birth to his firstborn son Ishmael. But that didn't satisfy him, I guess because it wasn't with his wife. So he finally meets up with God again and he's peeved. He's like, bro, we made the whole covenant, now I can't get my wife pregnant. What's the deal? God assured him that the deal was still on. He would still have a son with his wife. Then he threw a curveball at him and he changed his name to Abraham, and he changed his wife's name to Sarah. I don't know if he just liked the way they sounded better or what. So Abraham leaves confused at what just happened, but then shortly after, what do you know? Sarah becomes pregnant with Abraham's second son, Isaac. Ishmael ends up being banished from the kingdom because now Abraham had his new favorite son. And he's basically just forced to find a way to survive on his own. Then one day, God pops back up on Abraham and he's like, hey man, I know everything we talked about, I know, but I need you to sacrifice Isaac to me. Abraham's like, what? He still almost carries it out too, crazy enough. So God has to shout out like, stop, I was just kidding. It's just a test of your loyalty. Then they live happily ever after, I guess. The reason I'm telling you all of this is because this family is the direct reason for the conflict we see now. Ishmael's lineage goes on to create Muhammad and ends up being the birth of a new religion, Islam. Muhammad is believed to have ascended to heaven at Temple Mount in the heart of East Jerusalem. Isaac's lineage goes on to create King David, King Solomon, and Jesus Christ, which leads to the birth of two new religions, Judaism and Christianity. Abraham nearly sacrificed Isaac on Mount Moriah, which is the same location as Temple Mount. Jesus had many of his most iconic moments in Jerusalem, including flipping tables at Temple Mount. King Solomon's prophetic third temple is going to be built at, you guessed it, Temple Mount. Both sides of this war have motives that lie much deeper than earthly possessions or values. both believe they are the true heir to this land as descendants of Abraham. And according to the scriptures, both are right. In 1948, when the UN was given its first task of trying to figure out this disaster of a situation, they decided to split Jerusalem into two parts. The east side being the capital of Palestine, as Jerusalem has been the capital of Palestine for the entirety of its statehood. West Jerusalem being given to the newly formed Israel, an official Jewish state. Since then, both sides have been fighting aggressively to gain full control of Jerusalem. As of today, Temple Mount is under Muslim control and is the current location of the Dome of the Rock. Jews are allowed to enter, but are not allowed to pray on the premises. The only spot where they can legally pray is on the Western Wailing Wall. Now, this is the key spot to focus on. As this battle heats up, Israel has a huge ally on their side, and that is the right-wing evangelical Christian base in America. This particular group of people have a vested interest in seeing Jerusalem fall under Israeli ownership, because they want to see the prophecies of the Bible come true. King Solomon's temple cannot be rebuilt until Jews control that land. And Jesus cannot return until that temple is rebuilt. So this group definitely takes a macro level look at the situation. They're not at all worried about the thousands of innocent men, women, and children that are dying from missile strikes. And they're not worried about the Antichrist and apocalypse that precedes the return of Jesus in their own book. They just want to be right. As do the Jews, as do the Muslims. But maybe the answer is all three sides realizing they are truly family, and that these religious lines in the sand made with the blood on their hands did not exist when the covenant was formed. Only brotherhood. And the land God promised to them is already theirs. Maybe the prophecy is complete when Solomon's temple and Dome of the Rock stand side by side.